work session of the mayor and council for January the 12th at 3 p.m. to order. Let me start out with reviewing the agenda. I need to make a couple of changes to the work session agenda. Let's go down to C1, and we will strike that item, and we will replace C1 with splash pad equipment purchase. I then want to go down, and I'm going to change H from adjournment to public comments, and then I'm going to add an I, and that will be adjournment. Does any other council members have any changes, or staff, do you have any recommendations for changes? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
We would like to table B7 to next month.
B is in boy. Okay, so when we get that, we will, David, I believe we'll need to leave that on the regular agenda, and then we'll table it in that session?
Correct.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, anything else from staff? All right, let's, I'm going to take just a moment at the beginning to recognize and give a few minutes to Bernice Brooks, who is the new school board member, just recently sworn in. She wanted to talk for a few minutes and wanted to talk about, I think, SPLOS. But come on up, Ms. Brooks. I'll give you 3 minutes to speak up front.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Bernice Brooks, 130 Red Branch. I'm standing because, number one, I know the SPLOST is coming up in March. And the other thing I want to know is that if we can help you as citizens to get people educated as to how this works and what they need to do to help pass it. That's the only comment I have. Would you give us information and let us help you get the citizens educated as to how and what we are going to do?
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate that. I appreciate those comments. And the city manager is working on how we are going to work on that, how we're going to get that information out. So we'll be in touch with you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Let me move on into A, governing body. A1, discussion of personal transportation vehicles, a PTV ordinance. This item comes to us tonight from Ms. McPherson. So let me turn it over to her and let her introduce this item, and let's see where we're at.
Okay, my first memory of dealing with anything having to do with what we would call PTVs, personal transportation vehicles, golf carts that are made for use other than just on the golf course. So often we'll use the terms interchangeably, but really they're very different. If you think of a golf cart and what's required for it on a golf course compared to if you're on the streets, that sort of thing. It first got addressed, and since I've been on the council, I was about 1.5 years in, and as I recall, it was related to Councilman Michael Williamson, who was concerned about seatbelts, seeing children drive around the Mirror Lake community or being on the back and that sort of thing. And it was all a safety thing. But we went ahead and actually, there was an ordinance developed to address this in general. Now, after I looked at it, I realized there's a couple things I feel like we should look at in the ordinance, because it's been years since we've talked about it, and I'm very concerned that when we pass laws, if people aren't educated about it, if they don't know what's in the law, what's required, then how are they expected to obey it and abide by it or be aware of it? So there's a couple things I want to look at. I've defined for you generally what it is. Sometimes they're called low-speed vehicles. I took a little advice from the city attorney, and when I discussed the issue of looking at the roads that ours are allowed on here in Villarreal, ours are allowed on roads 25 miles per hour and under. I want us to look at and consider what would happen if we allowed them on roads, which is the state requirement of roads 35 miles and under. And at the advice of David, I think we should get a list of roads that would apply to. What are those city, because it's only city roads, they are not allowed on state highways. And so I'd like us to look at that. I'd also like us to look at the crossings. And if we look at the ordinance itself, it mentions that there's only, and I don't know why it's written this way. According to state law, it can be allowed across a state road that's designated and properly marked. But in our ordinance, for some reason, we say that you can cross a state road one place. Well, one road, two locations. And that's Highway 78 out here, Veterans Memorial Highway, otherwise known as Montgomery. And that you can cross at South Carroll and you can cross over at Cheeves, which really is an extension of Montgomery. Not exactly. I have no idea why it got stipulated to just those locations. I would like us to look at that, which means we're probably going to have to look at the history. So you can drive them in Villa-Rica. You can drive them on any city street that's 25 miles per hour and under. You can cross a street of higher miles per hour as long as you're crossing from a 25 to 25. Hopefully y'all had a chance to look at what's required as far as equipment, what we're supposed to have. One of his main concerns when we addressed it per Michael Williamson, Councilman in Ward 4, because that's where the vast majority of golf carts are in the city, was that there be a seatbelt requirement. Now, I had a citizen bring this to my attention, and I looked through all the information, and I saw the requirement for seatbelts to be installed as part of the equipment. But unless somebody else has seen it, I saw no requirement as to them being worn. So I think we probably need to look at that. And I won't get into the details of all the other equipment and that sort of thing. There is a state requirement, and ours references not the law, but that you must abide by any state requirement in regards to, liability insurance, that sort of thing. And then lastly, which I alluded to, was we have to educate the public. So as we look at this, and if we want to consider changing the speed limit of the roads that it's allowed on, and we evaluate what those roads are, as we look at the requirement of them being registered with the local police, I'd be curious to find out how many we have that are permitted in the city. And how many people are driving around with it not permitted, not so much because, I want to sit there and needle people. I just think, let's take it off the books if we're not going to enforce it. So if you do have to be registered, but I don't expect people to know that if we don't inform them. So lastly, in educating the public, I would like us to consider how we would work with our local dealer in making sure, who's going to see more golf cart owners than the local dealer? And maybe we should even go beyond the local one to say, if anybody comes in, they're from Villa-Rica, they live in city limits, would you please pass this information along? Maybe leave them with a couple copies of the ordinance. Even highlight some of the significant things of people that come into putting around, and let's make sure the word gets out through news media and that sort of thing. And that's pretty much all I have. I wanted us to look primarily at the speed limit that we allow them on and consider the 35 mile per hour after we get a list of the roads and look at them. But also, when I reviewed all of it, noticed there were a few other things that it would not hurt if we reviewed it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, David, you've had some discussion with Councilwoman McPherson about this. So let me see if I can summarize what she just said. What she is suggesting is that the state law actually allows up to 35 miles an hour, and
Correct.
we in the city of Villa-Rica have made our decision for it to be 25 miles per
Correct.
hour.
That's right.
She is suggesting that maybe we look at increasing that speed to 35. She is also suggesting that we make some kind of a clarification on the crossing where you can actually cross state highways, where we currently have decided that there were certain designated crossings. She is suggesting that maybe we revisit whether we broaden that. Is
Yeah,
that,
and I can address that one point.
Go
You
ahead.
raised a question as to why we were limited to two. We only have two crossings because that's, excuse me, the Department of Transportation directed that we would only have two locations. They're the ones that made the call on that, saying that you're only going to have golf carts crossing our highway at these two places and nowhere else.
all right, I appreciate that. So that one is not up for discussion. Requirement to wear seat belts. Ms. McPherson, are you suggesting that, because I haven't read all of this, that there is a requirement to have seat belts but no requirement to wear seat belts? Is that what I'm understanding? David, is that?
I can't find it, and yet, that was the main reason that former councilman brought it up. It was a thing that was very important to him. I wasn't a big proponent, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. It's a legitimate point to look into. You would think that perhaps the general state law requiring us to wear seatbelts in our cars probably would also apply to the personal transportation vehicles, but
Makes
I
sense
haven't
to
looked
me.
at that.
All right, and then, Ms. McPherson, liability insurance. Does our ordinance require liability insurance, David?
Not that I am aware of. You know, quite frankly, if you're out driving on the road without it, you're
Okay. Well, I
You're
mean,
mistaken.
that sort of fits your same logic with
Yeah.
the seatbelt, but I'm hitting the
Right.
points that she brought up.
It
Yes.
doesn't, but it does reference that you follow state law in regards to liability insurance.
Right.
So we may well already be addressing
I
that.
think you're probably covered on that.
If we were. And then her final point is how we educate the public, and it sounds to me like she's suggesting that the dealers would be involved in some way in educating the public and probably be required to hand out some sort of a pamphlet or some sort of information. Do we do that?
Not that I'm aware of, and along with that, just posting a page on our website that says, here's the rules for golf carts in Villarica, which I don't think we have that either.
Okay, so Ms. McPherson, and David, feel free to interrupt, but if I understand correctly, the only item that remains of any discussion here would be the speed limit. Does that sound right to you after having that discussion?
Well, it would, except that I don't always agree with necessarily taking no for an answer, especially if it was years ago that they met certain stipulations. So you could be over on Memorial Drive, North Ave, all these places that are 25 miles per hour, but if you wanted to cross Dallas Highway to get over to one of the other 25-mile, even at Tanner, from Tanner, you couldn't do that based on if they're only going to give us two, because we have state highways going, that's our challenge in Villarica. We have state highways going through everywhere. And so I don't think it would hurt to revisit it with them and verify, what are their requirements, why, are there other options for us? That's pretty,
And
that's pretty
I
much
agree with
it.
that. It doesn't hurt to ask again. I mean, that
Okay.
was the answer last time. We've changed in 5 years, so.
Yeah, 'cause
Mayor,
I think that Mr. Williamson dealt with this maybe in 14, or, right, 14
Yeah.
or 15. Okay, Mr. Carter?
yeah, I'm interested in that, what she's saying about 35, because everybody south of I-20, a block from coming downtown with a golf cart, Edge Road is 35 miles an hour, Daniel's 35 miles an hour. You just can't get here from there because of the speed limit. It's locked in here, so I'll be interested in seeing if we can put them on 35,
Right.
particularly which roads we can use.
Well, the one point to remember on this, and I try and look at it from a practical standpoint, personal transportation vehicle by definition is limited to going no faster than 25 miles per hour. So if you put a 25 mile per hour vehicle on a 35 mile per hour road where most people are probably driving 40 plus, you have you have at least the concern. I don't want to say that it's going to happen, but at least the concern that you have people that get impatient who are driving 40 miles per hour behind somebody who's putting along at 25 miles per hour, and they do things like try and pass. That's something to at least consider, and I think y'all have to, you can legally do it, but you got to use your good judgment as to whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing to do it.
Okay. Is anybody else?
I just wanted to add on the crossings issue, because, for example, I live in Summergate, so technically by this ordinance, which I guess technically Bay Springs Road is not a city road anyway, so there could be some other hiccups in that. But the idea being that you couldn't go from Summergate across the street to the V-Plex because we're limited to just 2 crossings. Now, 61's a 4-lane highway in that part, so that may be some other considerations, though it's controlled by a traffic light. So, but thinking about the speed limit issue now, I want to say Bay Springs is probably a county road. So as I think through this, maybe my thought process isn't there,
so
but still.
If there, Mr. Young or Ms. Marchman?
I just want to make one comment. The ordinance says it keeps calling it public roads, and that's not exactly true. It's city roads, not county roads, not state roads. It's city roads. So that there's people get a wrong perception there of every road is public out here unless it's a private road or something. So they think they can get out on it just reading the ordinance, and that's not true.
I understand that. So it sounds to me like there is at least enough of a consensus up here to task staff with taking a look at this question of increasing the speed limit and also these crossings. So David, this is really going to fall in your wheelhouse with the legal part, and then staff will have to work on some sort of a recommendation to bring back to council. And so I think, is that what you would like to happen?
That would be great. Sorry, that would be great.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do that, and then we'll come back with some sort of a staff report and see where we're at. My initial thoughts is that along the lines of what you're saying, it seems to me very difficult to increase the allowable speed limit for these vehicles on roads where you already have people driving substantially above the speed limit. The fewer of these on those roads, the better, but let's see what staff comes back with, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr.
If I could
McPherson.
just mention real
Yes,
quick.
go ahead.
Part of what made me think about this is the fact that we want to have a gold nugget trail, but let's be honest, that is years from now. And so it would be nice to have some other options. I just mentioned also, David had such a valid point, because you also put that in your email, about what happens a car gets behind. I'm a walker, I'm a cyclist, bicycle, and also drive an RV. And there are times, just out of courtesy, what you need to do if there's a faster vehicle behind you is to pull over to the side and let them go by, including when you're going up the mountain with an RV. Nobody wants to get stuck beside, so when there's a place to kind of pull off, just let them go. And dealing with impatient people. But that's all. Thank you. I appreciate the consideration and that we can look at it.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's move on to A2, the appointment of William D. Coleman Jr. to the Billerica Development Authority. If there are no objections, I'll make that item consent number 1.
No objection.
Let's move on to B1, 2, and 3. These items, let me just say right up front, this is a big agenda, and I intend to move through it as quickly as possible. So if you see me doing that, don't be surprised. Items B1, 2, and 3, community development. These are alcohol permit requests. They will require a public hearing on Tuesday. I do not intend to spend a lot of time with them tonight. They will not be on the consent agenda. However, if staff would like to at least present them, in case there are questions from staff tonight, I'm happy for that. Who's going to do it? Bobby? Come on. Item number B1, ABL-01-2021, alcohol beverage permit request for Mi Ranchito Inc., DBA El Ranchito. Bobby, go ahead. That was a lot.
Mr. Mayor, I think this is a change of ownership via divorce. They currently have a alcoholic beverage license. It's just a matter of a change of ownership and renewing.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? All right, let's move on to B2, ALB-02-2021, alcohol beverage permit for Buckeyes Bistro. Go ahead, Bobby.
Mr. Mayor, this is a new bistro restaurant located in a suite adjacent to the Chevron station over on Edge Road. This is a new application to pour and serve alcohol, beer and wine. They've passed the background check and all the ordinance requirements by the city, and staff recommends approval.
Okay, again, there'll be a public hearing on this Tuesday night if there anyone who chooses to speak for or against this.
Mayor, that's tonight. not
Council.
Tuesday. That's tonight.
Oh, there will be. I'm sorry. Calm down. Give
It's
me a
okay,
moment.
Mayor. All the applicants are planning on being here tonight.
Thank you, sir. All right, council, anybody have any questions on this item? All right, B3, ABL-03-2021, alcohol beverage permit for Thai Basil Cuisine, Inc. Bobby?
Mr. Mayor, this is also a new application for the Thai Basil Cuisine Restaurant. All restrictions and qualifications, the applicant has passed all background checks. Everything is copacetic with the city, and staff recommends approval.
All right, that's a new word for you. I haven't heard you use that one before.
Where
Council,
was
any
this-
questions?
Where was
Mr.
this
Carter?
located?
It's in the end cap of the O'Charlie's, on the other end, yes.
Any other questions from council? All right, thank you, Bobby.
Mhm.
Items B, 4, 5, and 6 are variance requests requiring a public hearing. Let's go ahead with item B4, VA-05-20, variance request at 739 Parker Street. Go ahead, Ron.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The applicant is requesting a variance from the minimum dwelling size permitted in the zoning ordinance, which is 1,500 square feet. They wish to construct a one-story, single-family dwelling with a total heated square footage of 1,152 square feet. So the applicant is requesting this because of the averages of the square footage for dwellings along Thomas Dorsey and Parker Street in that general vicinity being substantially lower. So the section that they're asking relief from is 4.04 in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, and like I said, there will be a public hearing later tonight, and the staff recommendation is?
Is denial.
All right, council, does anybody have any questions for Ron? Okay, so no, Mr. Carter? All right, no questions. Ron, let's move on to B5, VA-02-21, variance request at southwest corner at North Dogwood Street and White Street. Go ahead.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a variance to remove sidewalks as a requirement as set forth in section 9.014 of the Villarreal zoning ordinance. The applicant received preliminary plat approval from the Planning Commission on December 1st to construct 15 single-family homes with back-loaded garages and driveways. And this lot is located in the R2 single-family urban zone.
Ron, help me out here. I thought I received an email regarding this particular variance request that suggested that since there would be the necessity to remove a certain number of trees, that they would no longer be requesting this variance. Is that not correct?
No, they're still requesting the variance. The applicant hasn't given any further information. We received very preliminary information last week related to the trees that were subject to the December 1st meeting, and that a lot of those trees are going to be removed. So the purpose of this variance has now become unclear, being that they should be able to provide the sidewalks.
Bobby, do you have something to add?
Mr. Mayor, when the preliminary plat was approved by Planning Commission, the grading plan is not included in a preliminary plat. It just shows the layout with a topo and all that. I saw the grading plan in order to collect the stormwater and get it into the pond in the back. It's going to remove a lot of those big trees that we were trying to save. So that being the case, they'll have to replace some trees, but those big ones in the front, the grading plan is going to take those out. So the sidewalk is needed.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate the clarification on that. So, but the bottom line, though, is the staff is still going to recommend a denial of the variance that would allow them to not build the sidewalk.
That's correct.
I understand. Okay, council. Thank you, Bobby. Council, does anybody have any questions for Ron? All right, if there are no questions, Ron, we will move on to B6, extension of rezoning approval for Annex-02-19 and RA-06-19 at 135 and 189 Commerce Drive. Go ahead.
Yes, city staff is requesting an extension of the rezoning approval for this property. It expired on November 26th of 2020. The property owner, which is here for the work session, is attempting to secure other commitments for that project. COVID may have killed the original deal, but they're still looking to move that apartment complex project forward. So they would need an additional extension until January of 2022.
Okay, so this is an extension of 1 year request, and this one, staff recommends
Yes, we recommend approval.
approval. All right, council, anybody have any questions? All right, again, there'll be a public hearing on this, so we will move on. There being no questions from council, let's get to, we're going to skip 7. However, Madam Clerk, that still needs to come up on the regular agenda. All right, B8, amendment to the Villarreal zoning ordinance, residential subdivision design guidelines. Chris Montesinos, go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This agenda item is a supplement to the zoning ordinance. It's not an amendment to it. What this does is provides an enhanced resource to guide the review of residential subdivisions that are being proposed within the city limits. It is a supplement to the design standards in the form of additional guidelines which provide some enhancements that may be considered by either the city council or the planning commission, dependent upon the time of review. These are recommended guidelines. They are not requirements. They go above and beyond what's required from the ordinance standpoint to provide some flexibility to the decision makers when they are looking at areas where the developer does not want to abide by guidelines and maybe can act as a supplement. But it's an enhancement of the existing standards, not a detraction from those.
Give me an example, if you can, Chris, where that might apply.
All right, I chose 3 examples. I'll try to keep this brief. For example, houses on corner lots, the current ordinance requires that there be no blank windowless walls, leaves it at that. This takes it a step further and says that there should be at least 3. Now that depends on the placement, where they can go on the structure, what particular room that is, and how that's going to lay out. So those are kind of flexibility matters that the planning commission may say, well, we don't really like just one small window on one side. That really doesn't meet the intent of the ordinance. Another example might be, and we're gonna actually see some of these examples play out the next couple of months with a development that's moving forward. 50% of the front foundation should be some sort of masonry, whether that's brick or stone or something along those lines. This requirement requires that front facade trim wrap around all sides. Now that is aesthetically appropriate, but from a cost standpoint, maybe not very practical. But it could be a situation where there's higher visibility for certain houses in the neighborhood that maybe should require some additional fenestration treatment. So that may be an additional requirement that the planning commission could add. The last one I have is with respect to front entryways. We've seen a number of houses being proposed moving forward that have very limited architectural fenestration or windows or any sort of decorative designer elements or architectural elements. This provides a list that the planning commission can say, you should really look at some of these things like having side light windows or additional trimming on the perimeter of the door or a certain width of the porch or something like that, which is not necessarily a requirement of the ordinance. But what I do like about this one, garage-wise, is that the garages should not take up more than 45% of the front facade. And we've seen a lot of examples where you've got, a small recessed entryway and a 2-car garage, and that would not be something that would be allowed under this, under these guidelines.
Well, so it sounds to me what you're suggesting is that the P&Z would have the ability to be more restrictive than the actual code. But if you are going to do that, why would that not be a staff recommendation as opposed to it being left to the P&Z? And further, if that were to happen at the P&Z level and that were to be the final say, rather than it being some sort of a recommendation up to the city council, what would be the applicant's remedy if they still felt that that was just too much?
Well, what would happen is if there was a situation where the applicant disagreed with a requirement or a condition that the planning commission was going to impose as part of the preliminary plat process and plan review process that is under their umbrella, then they would fall under section 11.11, which is the administrative variances, which, contrary to what that sounds like, is actually a council review of a decision of either a staff member or a board in a decision that was made. So there is a right to appeal in those circumstances.
Okay, that remedy feels like it possibly could resolve my concern that an applicant feels that they have been unfairly treated in that process. However, when I think about the third example you gave, it seems that it could be appropriate to let some of these more mundane decisions fall down to the P&Z level. Because there are circumstances where if you were to wrap it around 3 sides of the house, 2 sides are never even seen, have no way to be seen. So why would the aesthetics matter in that case? So I can see that. That being, any council members? Mr. Montahan.
I think my question right now is, what is the hypothetical situation in which these guidelines are employed? It sounds like you're referring to preliminary plat review, but so how do you foresee this happening? The preliminary plat review is submitted to the P&Z, and then the P&Z then refers to these guidelines, looks at the preliminary plat, and then suggests or offers to the developer, well, on lots 10, 12, 13, those are corner lots, therefore we recommend or suggest that you put some stipulation in place to, additional windows or so forth. Or is that the scenario?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I guess, why not, I guess it's too early to do that at zoning then, right? At the zoning application level.
Well, a lot of times at the zoning level, prior to the approval of zoning, they don't necessarily have the preliminary plats or
Right.
the building elevations that are being planned for the next step.
Right.
So,
And so if the developer says no, I'd rather just I guess the other part is, we're now asking at preliminary plat review to also review architectural standards. And maybe, the developer's gonna have to submit some architectural
elevations,
reviews.
yeah.
Elevations, right. I don't know if we do that now in our current P&Z. I've never seen them review architectural elevations.
We really did not have strong architectural requirements prior to the adoption of the new zoning code. And so this is as a supplement to the actual standards. This is really more of an enhancement from the standpoint of the staff level, because the staff is really more involved in reviewing the elevations and reviewing plats, and then making a recommendation based on the technical merits with respect to design requirements or even some of the guideline enhancements. So the staff will have greater clarity in what exactly we're supposed to be looking for.
Right. And I guess if the developer just straight declines to adopt any of those recommendation guidelines, what's next?
We've got one of those coming down the pipeline, and what's going to happen is that they are seeking relief from the requirements of the ordinance standards, which is separate from the guidelines. In that case, they are going to be filing a special exception under the auspice of a variance from the design standards. And it will be incumbent on them to articulate what their level of hardship is in meeting the code requirements, other than it's just too expensive.
But at the same time, we're casting these as guidelines and not requirements. So maybe this is a David question, but what legal footing do we have to enforce them on on an applicant if they're just guidelines?
Sure. The standards in the ordinance are very specific and are more across the board for all development. The guidelines are additional enhancements that could make a project better that perhaps the developer didn't really consider. If you look at the totality of the guidelines versus the actual ordinance requirements, it's just an expansion upon things to consider, like if you are going to have a trailway system in your neighborhood, it's recommended that it actually connect to a regional trail system if there's one available. That's not something that's required by code. It's just kind of like, it just makes sense. There are some other examples with respect to landscaping, or most of these are really design related. I think our design standards are pretty solid. They are extremely solid for PUDs, but for just regular single-family residential subdivisions, they're not as restrictive. So what we want to do is these will kind of add some additional considerations that may make a project better. But to your point about the legality of it, the standards are the law. Any considerations or conditions that may be considered arbitrary do have an appeals process that they can go through. So,
Right. And so, if I may borrow Councilman Young's printout here. So the portion here where it says the Planning and Zoning Commission shall approve the petition with conditions. I mean, when you say petition, this sounds actually like it would be the, I'm sorry.
No, I was just commenting that, no, we can't enforce the design standards if they tell us to go, the guidelines, I'm sorry, if they just say, no, I'm not doing it, there's nothing we can do other than they're trying to buy our cooperation to speed the process along and cooperate with them if they adopt those guidelines, but we can't force them down their throats.
And so it seems like the only remedy we have would be to just deny their preliminary plat route altogether.
Yes. I mean, that's
So-
not the only thing we could do, but that is a strong remedy.
Okay, because I mean, I think what I'm getting to is that the P&Z Commission shall approve the petition with conditions. But when you say a petition, what are we talking about exactly? Preliminary plat submission?
It's the application for the preliminary plat or conceptual plan.
Okay, I just think some of the I mean, this sounds like, this page 14 and 15, the last couple of pages, I mean, this sounds like an entirely different application and scheme from a preliminary plat submission.
Yeah, I think the intent of the last section there is to maybe bestow some authority with regard to what the planning commission is supposed to be looking at, how that process and procedure works out, and what the remedies for appeal would be.
I mean, and their authority is already bestowed in the fact that they have prelim plat approval, and we don't review that unless, I guess, there is an appeal if they deny it or something, or add conditions. It's just that this doesn't read that way.
Yeah, I went back and looked at that this afternoon, and it does add a little murkiness to it. I'm certainly not, I don't think that the last 2 pages, 14 and 15, are critical to the document, since it is a guideline and it's not a regulation. So I'm certainly not opposed to omitting that just for clarity. But to the same respect, it does say very specifically that that the Planning Commission has absolutely no authority to approve any deviations from the ordinance standards themselves, and that authority is bestowed only to the City Council. So that pretty much covers everything that's required, except for the additional enhancements or guidelines that are recommended.
Okay.
Well, if I were to take David's word, which I always do, it sounds like that those would not be enforceable anyway. So tell me how you would be better served by having 14 and 15, or tell me, let's strike it and be done with this.
I think just for the point of simplicity, if we strike it and be done with this, and this is just a guideline, the provisions and procedures of the Planning Commission are already articulated in the zoning ordinance, and it's a little repetitive to include those in a supplemental article to the zoning ordinance.
Does that satisfy your concern, Mr. Montahan?
It does,
Okay.
I think. But I do have one more question.
All right, go ahead.
Semi-related. I'm sorry. So this is, you said this was a supplement to the zoning ordinance,
Correct.
not an amendment. And number 9 is also, we have it as an amendment. Well, the next 3, we have it, 8, 9, and 10, we have it as amendment. But if we're amending the zoning ordinance, does that require a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so,
So
we
these
don't-
do not indicate public hearings.
No, there's, the amendment to the zoning ordinance, that's a very good question. With respect to the design guidelines, since those are not an amendment, it's more of an adoption of a supplement. And that one specifically would not require a public hearing. As far as the other two
Can you get a little
goes-
closer to the mic?
Yeah, I'm sorry. As far as the other two go, city attorney.
David?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but any time that you amend an ordinance on a zoning ordinance, it requires a public hearing. And adopting a supplement that is not actually an amendment really, to me, doesn't seem to have any purpose or
Okay,
effect.
that satisfies possibly 8. It does not, however, satisfy 9 and 10.
That's
If
correct.
I have to have a public hearing on this, I haven't advertised that, certainly not on the agenda. Do I need to even entertain these tonight?
I would request they be pulled. Yeah.
Well, so 8, I'm going to ask somebody to amend the motion when we get in there. It's not going to be on the consent agenda, but leave it there. 9 and 10, I'm going to ask somebody to table these 2 items to the next council meeting, okay? If somebody will do that, okay? All right, Chris, all right. Thank you, Chris. All right, folks, are we clear on that? Number 8, B8, will
Are we
be,
clear?
will be modified. Are we clear on somebody making a motion on those? To modify the motion to remove pages 14 and 15. And then on B9 and B10, those are to be tabled to the next council meeting. All right. Items B, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 are reappointments. I am going to read these off, and then I'm going to ask if there are any objections to placing those on the consent agenda.
John?
17 as well, if I didn't say that. All right. Item B11, appointment of David Rogers to the Historic Preservation Commission. Item B12, appointment of Sarah Pitts to the Historic Preservation Commission. Item B13, appointment of Alan White to Historic Preservation Commission. Item B14, appointment of Renee Hooks to Historic Preservation Commission. Item B15, appointment of Mac Pilgrim to Planning and Zoning Commission. Item B16, appointment of Tom Flowers to Planning and Zoning Commission. And item B17, appointment of John Hannaback to Planning and Zoning Commission. Are there any objections?
No
Placing those-
objections. Let me point out that it specifies the first 2, it gives them 1 year, the next 2 gives them 2 years. Actually, next 3 are 2-year appointments. 16 and 17 are 3-year appointments, according to what I read on.
Oh, well, okay. I was going to have you complete that as an administrative task. When you put these back in, I want their terms, okay?
Okay, that's fine.
All right. But I thought you were saying it was on my agenda, but it's not. All right, so
Not on
will you
the
do that?
agenda,
Are
but-
there any objections to placing these items on the consent agenda?
No
No.
objection.
All right, thank you. All right, y'all give me just a moment to get caught up.
So that's C2 to C8.
B.
No, consent 2.
Okay,
to
got you.
Consent 8.
All right, C2, C3, okay, I got you. Okay. All right, we replaced C1, so I'll ask Parks and Recreation and Leisure Services Director Tracy Ivy to come forward. C1 splash pad equipment purchase. Ms. Ivy,
Good afternoon and Happy New Year to everyone.
thank you.
This action is subsequent to your last Friday's action to authorize a contract with a general contractor for design build services for the splash pad. And what we've done is met as a team, and we've decided there are several deducts that could have been pulled from the contract, and we will purchase some items directly. And one of those items is the Vortex equipment, which is all the splash pad features that the kids will play with interactively. We've decided to purchase those directly through the National Purchasing Partner, which is a national purchasing co-op that gives us competitive pricing and also a little discount for registering. So what we're asking is to purchase that equipment through NPP in the amount of $73,867.
And as we know, this is a budgeted item, and this also saves us the sales tax by going this route.
Certainly does.
All right, council, does anybody have any questions for Tracy?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I did read the email with the information. We don't have it electronically, is that correct? We still have just the Gradic information? That's what
Correct.
okay, so I'm gonna talk off my head, but I remember most of it.
You have a paper copy there if you need it.
I must, one, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, only I do?
I'm not seeing it, but that's okay. I don't think I really need it ultimately.
Okay, I'm sorry. Would you like?
I got the idea about us purchasing directly, saving money, tax, we've done the saving the tax cost on that. It came at the recommendation of the man we hired from Cobb County, who's overseeing a lot of these projects, correct, to go through these. And so my only thing would be use this company. Normally, I'm guessing we would put out to look for competitive bids. So I guess my only thing is to also that we're always transparent, that the person that made the recommendation doesn't have some sort of tie-in with the company or anything like that. That's the only thing I care about right now, is since we were directed to go one place for the items, that we make sure everything's on the up and up. I don't know any other straightforward way to put that.
I've known Bob McAllister for a number of years as a colleague in the Parks and Recreation industry, and he is a very upstanding guy in the community. He's retired now, but I don't believe there's an issue there.
So any cost comparisons, or we know that buying this equipment through them is not only quality, but it's competitive?
Absolutely, and Vortex is the top of the line equipment too. It's a very sound equipment that'll give us years of service.
Tom, are you comfortable with what we've done on this? Only because you're the city manager, I defer to you oversee all of this.
So,
It's not on.
I've only known Bob for one project. We did an aquatics facility in my previous job. I don't have any reason to believe that there's any financial kickback or anything that would concern us about that. But this purchase is the reason that we had the Friday special call meeting, so that we could bring this back today, because we have been told that there's a 16-week lead on delivery. And we're trying to open in the summer. Well, 16 weeks is mid-May, which is going to make the summer really tough. But if we had lost a month, then we're in mid-June just for delivery. No way we're opening until maybe July, and then, your summer's, you're potentially a couple of weeks from school opening. So anyway, that's how we got into this.
And I get that, and I understood that from the email, even though I couldn't be at that meeting, that was the reason we were trying to get ahead of the game. And I am in no way trying to infer that somebody's not on the up and up. I just want us to be very clear when we're only going to one source, and that I don't want to be a part of holding this up, but I do want somebody to just ask that question of him. We just want to make sure that what we're buying is competitive for the quality that we're getting. That's all.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
one of the reasons that I recommend somebody like Bob in a situation like this is because I know two things are going to happen. One is he is going to keep me from using equipment or vendors that he's had bad experience with. And two, he is going to direct me toward vendors and equipment that he's had good experience with, and he has done this for all of Cobb County for however many years. I I can't duplicate that in-house, you know, and I don't know anybody else in the business that I could go to that brings that to the process, right? So what I'm counting on by bringing Bob to the council and y'all approving him is that all of this equipment, whether it's the filter pump room or the play equipment or whatever, and all the contractors that we're using are gonna result in a project that we really, really, really like, because this is a lot of money to me. When you think about the whole master plan of redoing Gold Dust, you know, 800 grand or 750 or something is a big, big, big chunk of it. And this is a super visible project. You know, this isn't like the Edge Road water line that nobody's really gonna see. This is something that the whole community potentially is gonna interact with at some level with their kids or whatever. So that's why we're doing this the way that we're doing it.
All right. Any other questions from council?
Let
Mr.
me
Carter.
just point out one thing, just so the public will know, the equipment purchase is $74,000 worth of equipment, so they need to be aware that we're spending that kind of money.
Using a
Mr.
national purchasing co-op gives us some certainty that the lead time is gonna be right? No?
Wouldn't think so. I sure wouldn't want to make that statement if I was in this environment.
Right, well, y'all keep in mind that one, that's how he operates, but two, there are any number of reasons why he can't make that call, because COVID slows down production, it slows down delivery, it has impacted industries all across, so there's just no way, but we're doing the best we can to be proactive in trying to get ahead of it, and that's what this thing's all been about.
And if I might
ma'am.
as well, these will be the last features that will be in the installation process to keep from vandalism occurring and that kind of thing. So we have even more time to, hopefully we get all this in time for that installation process.
Well, I hope you also have a plan for where you'll store this
We have a
securely.
plan.
We do.
We certainly, it's not at my house.
All that I know. Okay, any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, I'll make this consent item 9 if there are no objections. All right, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
D, Public Works, Bobby Elliott. D1, Avanti Welcome Center Plumbing Repairs at Nick. Come on up here, Nick. Use some colorful language in your cover sheet, and if not specifically language, you certainly drew a picture for us.
That was my intention.
I got you. Go ahead.
Okay, so actually thinking about this item, we could consider it completely funded. That $3,000 that we're over is coming from maintenance repair buildings. We are maintaining and repairing this building, so.
Have you ran that by Sarah?
Yes.
Would you feel that is funded through the budget? Okay. All right, go ahead. Present the item.
Okay, so this item, or let me give you a background. Since I've been here, which is almost 6 years, we have the Welcome Center and Main Street office has always had kind of a pungent odor when you walk in, especially in the mornings. It's a sewer smell. We know what type of smell it is, so that's not questionable. But we really haven't been able to rectify that issue. We can't correct it, or nothing that we have done in the past has corrected it, which we've tried many, many, many different things. Going as far as sealing and the floor drains, which isn't advisable, but we're going to give it a shot. I've had the problem that we are running into is there's a venting issue with all of the toilets and the sewer drain, and we really don't know why. The sewer lines and the plumbing is going through the concrete subfloor, but there's also, we've repurposed that building's been repurposed at least 4 times in its history. It's very old. A portion of that building was demolished when we built the amphitheater. There's been tales and rumors that a sewer line has collapsed somewhere on that property. Somewhere, the main sewer line is going through the middle of the Avanti building. So I've had multiple contractors come in. None of them have given me the suggestion of just starting new. Let's investigate. Let's demo the concrete. We'll pull all the toilets, pull the vanities, and start fresh. But before we start, and what you guys need to know is that once we get through this concrete and in the sewer and the drain lines, when we scope them, we may run into something much larger. We know there's an issue. I feel it's unfair to staff for them to have to work in that type of environment. I do strongly believe that if we vent each toilet connected to, what our initial plan is, just to, if we don't find any problems with the existing venting that's near the roof, we're going to just tie into that. But each fixture is going to have their own vent. We're going to put trap primers in there, so it's constantly going to get water. Because one of the things that does help the issue is pouring water into all these drains, filling the toilets up manually, because something is sucking everything dry. Something is pulling it. So I met with PV Construction. Like I said previous, he's the only company that has offered this type of solution or work scope. And I'd like, you guys are aware of that issue, by approving the budget this year and what our intentions were partially, but this is what staff recommends approving.
So, Nick, I'm sympathetic to that situation down there. It does concern me, though, that really what you're describing here is almost a fishing expedition. I mean, you don't know what the issue is. Is there no other way to get to the issue? Can we not scope these lines?
I have tried. I've had a company come in and try it. We have no drawings of the plumbing like a few other facilities. There's no plans, nothing to refer to. So when I scoped it personally, I went, pulled every toilet, scoped it, and I tried creating like a schematic, hand-drawn schematic to find an issue. That's fishing right there, because I've even gone so far to pull, there's a huge mirror in the men's bathroom at the Avani building. I cut all the drywall off to try to see where the venting is, what could possibly be pulling. Where I know that the issue is there's a vacuum issue. There could be more issues. So as far as finding another solution to possibly doing something on a lesser scale and fixing it, I don't think so. I really don't.
Okay, well, I wanted you to talk about that because you describe in here how you feel like you have exhausted the limits of what staff can do, and I wanted to hear you say that because when you describe it as though we're going to spend $34,550 on a remedy that may or may not produce the final result that you hope to achieve, but may well create a new problem that is discovered that you're going to bring back over here, that, I at least want to know that we've done everything that we can before we go this route. All right, staff, council, does anybody have any questions?
I didn't see the timeline, and how long is this going to take, do you think?
The work, once we begin, this exact scope of work should take around 2 weeks. So what the city has arranged for the staff is for them to go ahead and relocate at the library. That'll give me an additional couple weeks that I can, and what I hope to do, and I may not, I'm going to try to do some of the demo work in-house. With them out of that office, I'll have more time to kind of start nicking at these things and preparing, which will, if I can actually put a dent in it, would lower the cost.
There's also been talk about repurposing the Advanti building. Does this tie in any way to those plans as preparatory work, or?
We'll know more.
It's not just we're also getting vanities, new fixtures, new stalls, new flooring. So we're gonna fix the issue. I'm confident of that, but we're also gonna remodel.
Improve.
Okay, anybody else?
My concerns mirrored yours. It was the hope. We hope this does it, but it looks like you've exhausted.
I wish I could guarantee it,
Yeah.
but I'm afraid, like I said, that main sewer line is my concern. There could be a belly unit.
You've been doing this long enough to know. I don't want you to stand up there and guarantee something and then come back and ask for more money or
I don't
ask for
wanna do
something
that
else
either.
when you didn't get it right the first
Yeah,
time.
and who would want to work in there?
All right. If there are no objections, I will make this C10.
No objection.
All right, Nick, let's move to D2. Is that you? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
To engage KBS Heating and Cooling to replace a 7.5-ton unit located at 70 Harsh Luther Drive. This was an emergency purchase, is that
sir.
correct?
I'm actually asking for a ratification. The company has installed that unit today. That's the building that we lease out to Southeast Trans. They have office staff on, if y'all been in the old library, it's actually kind of divided up into two sections. The left section had the larger unit, which is the 7.5-ton, which might have been the reason why it hadn't been replaced previous, because the other two systems are fairly new and already on that new refrigerant. So this is the system that failed was on the R22. The new system that is going to be, or that was installed today, it's on the new 410. It's more energy efficient, and it'll provide us with many, many years of service.
Okay, and that cost is $13,010. That purchase has already been made, and you are asking to ratify that tonight.
Yes, sir.
Council, does anybody have any questions? If there are no questions, I'm going to make that consent 11.
No objection.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you said 13,010, it says 13,000 on there.
Yeah, I had to make an adjustment. So on the actual,
Read the motion.
I was off by $10.
The motion has $13,010,
Yes,
so
sir.
Yeah,
we're
but the
okay.
headline had 13, so you
Yes,
should
sir.
have corrected
My
both of
apologies.
them.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to police. Tab E is Mr. Shaddix will be presenting. So E1 is purchase active shooter hard armor plate vest. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. This is part of what we've been doing the fundraisers for the last year and a half, 2 years. We're finally ready to move forward with these purchases. I don't know what questions you might have about it.
Give me just a minute. I was going to pull it up. So how much of this did you raise? The cost here is $15,298.11. Is that right?
Yes, sir. And I believe all of this has been raised through fundraising efforts.
I thought most of that probably had been. I appreciate that. Okay, do you want to talk a little bit about why we would get these? We've done it at a number of.
Lieutenant Etheridge would be a better, could probably better explain a lot of it than I could. He's been the.
Would you like to star in the show for a few minutes tonight, Lieutenant? We've talked about it a few times at a number of council meetings as we've been raising money and talked about the concert and those kinds of things. But I think it helps for the public to hear a little bit more about.
Sure, absolutely. Afternoon, Mayor and Council. So we began in about October of 2019 with fundraising efforts towards this end. Obviously, everyone knows that we wear concealable soft body armor, but that's only designed to defeat certain calibers and types of ammunition. What law enforcement generally has faced an increase of in terms of active shooter events are enhanced weapon capabilities on the other side of the coin, so rifles. So hard armor plate is the way to protect officers who are engaging in an active shooter situation, trying to neutralize that situation or bring it to a safe, successful resolution. These vests do that. These are a level 3 plus hard armor plate AR-550 steel. They also have a full spall coating, so when a bullet strikes something, it's got to go somewhere, right? Newton taught us that. So what typically will happen is that bullet will fragment into, you go from one large projectile to hundreds of smaller projectiles. It has a coating which will absorb the spall from the round that strikes the plate. The vests that we've selected also come with some enhanced capabilities. They have gear attachments on the front and rear for placing first aid equipment, and they come with integrated tourniquet and magazine pouches also to allow some extra equipment to be available to the officers. They also come with a protective case. Obviously, this is not something that will be worn every day. We pray that we never need them. That's our honest prayer, but we would like to have them should the day come that we need them. So they come with a protective case to allow them to be placed in the patrol vehicle to offer some additional protection to the equipment. They have a 20-year shelf life. 3 plus is the hard armor to get in our situation. The cost in front of you a little better than $15,000. That's 100% fundraised. We have some additional purchases that we'll be presenting to you in the future. We raised enough funds to also purchase helmets and some other accessories. So we are in the quote phase for those items now. I call phase 1 the vests, and that's where we are today.
Well, I appreciate that fine forensic analysis. That sounded like you were answering a Jeopardy question there.
I'm used to being in court, Mayor.
I thought you did a great job. I didn't know about the helmets, so I appreciate that. I
Yes, sir.
usually get some sort of a heads up on that. All right, thank you for that, Lieutenant. Does any council members have any questions?
I would just give a shout out to Sticks Bar and Grill. I know they were a part of that fundraising. Maybe there were some others too, but I know they did the one downtown, and anybody else that donated. And this is good. You guys will have this in your either back seat or in the trunk to pull out if you need it, and hopefully you won't.
All right, anybody else? And I believe at one of our council meetings, and certainly at that concert, we actually brought up the lightweight vest and these plated, these heavy vests, and the weight is significant. You're right, you're not wearing it all the time because you couldn't. You'd look like those guys over there carrying those tires around at the boiler room. So, all right, if there are no objections, I will make this consent 12.
No objection.
No objection.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Shaddix, Captain, E2, approval of copier maintenance agreement. We're going from something protective to something necessary.
We are. As we know, we make a lot of copies, both for building case files to send down to court for prosecutions to copies of reports for citizens, accident reports, so forth. So a copier machine is used daily at a great deal. And I can't tell you how many copies are made. I don't have those numbers. But our old copier, they've no longer, the company that serviced it will no longer service it because of its age. So we're looking at installing this new copier. There's a contract here, so it's, if I believe it's, oh gosh, I forget what the amount was. $218 a month for 36 months. There's a $75 origination fee. Anything over 5,000 copies would be charged at 0.008 cents per copy.
But you have no idea how many pages you're running?
I'm not sure how many we're running right now, sir.
Okay. Well, so my guess is that...
I'm hoping that the 5,000 copies per month would keep us close, that we would stay under that. But even if we went over it, it would not. The cost would not be that much greater.
Okay. Well, I assume that this was... You had looked at multiple offers or bidders for this.
My understanding, we looked and this was the best that we could find, or what we felt was the best.
And I've seen agreements like this similar. 5,000 does seem to be a number that they use, but I didn't know how that compares to what the police department uses. I think Alyssa runs 5,000 a week down at City Hall, so I didn't know what you guys were using. All right, council, does anybody have a question?
This amounts to about $7,900 a month.
A year?
Well, it says so much per month.
79.
It's $218.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
a
the
month
total price for 36 months.
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So it's about $8,000 worth
for a 3-year plan.
for a 3-year plan. That's just the maintenance and it's their equipment. Is that correct?
They're going to take care of it. They said that's the total cost for us for that during that time, other than paper.
I was going to say, normally paper's not included.
Right.
Okay, but the
Paper we'd have to
toner
include,
and maintenance and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So
All right.
I think it's a very good deal.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? All right, if there are no objections, I will make this item C13.
No objection.
All right, thank you, Captain. All right, let's move on to F, utilities. Pete, F1, emergency repair of the North Plant #1 aerator, gearbox, and motor. You always have the most difficult lines for me to read in here. I think you do this on purpose.
I do not. I apologize.
All right, go
I
ahead.
do my best. Well, the purpose is to engage a contractor to rebuild the gearbox and the motor for the aerator at the North Plant for the #1 basin. There was a bearing failure on the aerator. It's a 1986 model, so it's got a lot of years on it. This is a budgeted item, and once the bearing failed, we started getting some quite a bit of vibration and then binding up of the gears itself, which dictate that we have to go ahead and go through the gearbox. And then when you're doing that work, you also want to do work on the motor. instead of doing one and not the other, you want to do them both at the same time, because you have to replace bearings and that sort of thing, inboard and outboard on the motor itself as well. Staff's recommending that we engage Goforth Williamson Incorporated to do this rebuild work on the aerator, gearbox, and motor in an amount not to exceed $23,870.
All right, this starts out by saying emergency repair. Has
Yes, sir.
this repair not been done?
It has not been done yet.
Okay. And it is a budgeted item. Did you anticipate this particular repair, or was that part of maintenance and repair?
It's part of
generally?
maintenance, it's part of maintenance and repair. That's the
understand.
line item it's coming out of.
Yes, sir. Okay. Council, does anybody have any questions? All right, if there are no questions, I'll make this consent 14.
No objection.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Tom Barber, we will get to tab G, City Manager, item number 1, professional services agreement with Michael Bledsoe. I guess he's with the engineering group.
Yeah, Michael is an independent engineer, been on his own for about 20 years, and the way that I met him was through Brennan. We've had a relationship with Brennan now for a couple of years. If you remember, he started out, I guess, with the lift station analysis, and then he did the manhole review, and has helped us with the whole idea of doing basin level sewer improvements instead of for each individual development. The problem with Brennan is it's just Brennan. So we're using Carter and Sloop for the bigger projects like Edge Road and 78 and North Avenue and Cowan Lake and the water plant, but on the sewer side, we're using just Brennan, and he just can't keep up. So if you remember when we did the lift station analysis, we still have not bid that. So was that 18 and 19? And then we did the manhole analysis, and it has not been bid out. And right now, we've got more development going on than we can keep up with because of the sewer implications of all of them, particularly developments like the townhomes beside First Baptist or the residential development on Connors across the street from Liberty Point. So I went to Brennan one day and I said, Brennan, I need a clone. Go find a guy like you with your background that's been working with municipalities who can come in here and help us on smaller projects and actually do what you're doing. And so this is who he recommended. We had Mike come in, very sort of eerily similar background, Southern Tech guy, around the same age, been in business for himself around the same time, worked in lots of cities that we know. One of the benefits of using Brennan that we don't have with Mike is that Brennan lives in Winston, and Mike lives in Gwinnett, which is not ideal. But a lot of what he'll be doing for us is design, and so he can do that wherever. So I'm recommending that we give Mike a try. I don't have any experience with him from previous employment, but comes highly recommended, has a background that seems to fit us in terms of municipal design, and I think he'll help us to get some of these projects completed and help us stay up with the development that we see coming our way.
All right. Council, does anybody have any questions for Tom?
Yeah.
Mr. Carter.
He's quoting it by the hour. Any idea how many hours we're talking about here? $150 an hour for a project manager?
It'll be the same way that we handle Brennan. So I think Brennan is probably $5 an hour more than
How many hours are we
than
talking
this
about?
rate. Well, what we do with Brennan is we bring you every project with a not to exceed, and we'll do the same thing with Mike. So, you know, we'll say, hey, this is the project, give me a proposal, we bring it to y'all, y'all approve it, and we do, it'll be task by task as we go.
Oh, okay.
Our best hope is that we have 2 Brennans. Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Okay.
If they're going to do it project by project, we'll know the total cost.
Yes, sir,
Right.
on each one.
Right.
Any other council members? All right, if there are no objections, I'll make this item C15.
No objection.
Thank you. All right, let's move to G2, General Election 2021 qualifying fees. As we all are aware, being a municipal election this year, there'll be 3 council member seats up. These, Mr. Macklin, these fees are set by law. They are a percentage.
3% of your salary.
So there's not a lot of discussion here. Council, do you have any questions?
He just answered mine, where the number came from. It's 3%, okay.
All right, if there are no further questions and no objections, I'll make this item consent 16.
No objection.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's get to G3, which I must say, I have not had a chance to get briefed on, so I'm going to be learning on this item.
All right.
All right, let me read it. G3, approval of resolution to purchase Lot 11 in Tanyard Village.
So back in 18 or so, we started talking about the issue of the sewer line under 20 and the bottleneck that presented. And that sewer line runs up the east side of 61 through multiple lift stations up to Walmart, and then goes through an 8-inch underneath the interstate, and then follows a single route through the Ingalls development and the Food Depot development to Centennial Park across the street from City Hall, and then goes beside City Hall. And the solution that we proposed, or at least the Band-Aid, was to put in a relief line from the first manhole north of 20 that directs flow over to Ingalls and the hotels, that we would put in another line that would go due north and run along the other side of Tanyard, sort of between Tanyard and Powell Park, down to the same point at Bicentennial. So basically all we did was move the bottleneck to Bicentennial from just north of 20, but it bought us all that capacity. So we've got that much pipe that can fill up now twice instead of once before we have a backup. So we got that done. Now the problem is, having done that, we realize that we can't get back there and maintain anything. We own land, we the city, between Powell Park and the backyards of the houses on the east side of Tanyard, but it's not passable, which is why it's still undeveloped. It's a long, narrow north-south parcel. So we went to Larry Boggs, who is developing the remaining houses on the end of Tanyard, and ask him about doing some kind of acquisition of one of those parcels so we could build a road to get back in there and maintain this sewer easement. Well, he has had to place a $50,000 bond to have the roads resurfaced in there when he finishes building. And so what he proposed is that we release that bond and we take on the responsibility of doing the road, and in return, he gives us the deed for one of those lots, which we felt like was a fair trade. So we added that road work, right, to the current Baldwin project, which would be done next year. And we're still going to have to incur the cost of building a gravel road, right? So we'll have to clear and maybe grade some and, put in the road to get back there. But that's our solution to the access issue.
Well, I take that back. I was not briefed on it for this agenda, but I've been well briefed on it many times over probably the last 8 months, and I am aware of the issue. Let me ask a question, though. Let me make sure I understand. So if we release the $50,000 bond, have we considered, Mr. Macklin, I guess, what the value of this Lot 11 is and what the city would be paying in comparison to that value?
I don't know the answer to that. I have not done that.
Aren't we required to get an appraisal before we enter into an agreement to buy real property?
It's advisable to do so. I don't think that it's an absolute legal requirement.
Tom, what do you estimate the cost is to the city for lot 11?
And then release. So I figured they're two different things.
So where Bobby comes into this is he did the paving part of this. And Bobby, tell him, what do you think the cost of the actual paving component of our side of the transaction is?
We won't know exactly until the actual work's done, because, field quantities are how the paving company actually bills us for that particular thing. But the engineer's estimate that I've got based on the current paving prices per ton is about 40 grand. It's what it's going to cost to retop those streets in Old Tanyard Village.
So if he has a $50,000 bond, he would have used 40 of that 50,000 based on Bobby's estimate. And if we release the 50, then essentially we're paying $40,000 for lot 11.
Mm-hmm.
And we absolutely need this access. I have been in a number of meetings where staff just cannot get back there. So, all right, I understand it better now, and I appreciate that. Council, do you have any questions?
You said 40,000, but we released a $50,000 bond.
Well, the $50,000 bond is what the developer has put up to guarantee that he will top the road.
Yeah.
He may not spend 50, he may only spend 30 or 40 or 20. Bobby estimates that it would cost 40, so we assume that
Mr.
that's
Mayor,
our
we
cost.
got,
Yes, sir.
we got some great per ton prices based on a $2 million paving project.
Yes, sir. That's what we're
I
waiting
doubt seriously whether Mr. Boggs could get that subdivision topped for less than 50.
on. Okay, all right. Yes, sir, Mr. Young.
I missed the piece about whether or not we were required to get an appraisal.
He said it's advisable, not required.
That's correct.
I just note that the Carroll County tax records show the value at $10,000, and I think the neighboring lot's $20,000. So I understand that Mr. Boggs may have some lost profits to factor into that. So, however, but I
In
just wanted to point that
our
out.
case, I don't have a plan B.
Yeah, I mean, I figured that's where we were going with that, number
Yeah.
one. And number two, I mean, Mr. Mecklin, would you like to talk about tax value versus actual value? Hey, let's not forget, from a real estate perspective, these lots are developed lots, which you probably cannot get for less than $35,000 or $40,000 right now.
Yeah.
So, I
understand
mean,
that.
there is certainly reason to believe that the value is there if somebody were going to build a house. The problem the city has is we don't have access to our facilities unless we get access here. And I don't know that we would have a plan B in terms of an easement if they did build a house there.
There's usually a premium that goes along to the buyer who really, really needs that one particular lot, as opposed to any other lot out on the market.
It feels like more than I would want to pay. It feels like in our situation, we don't have a choice and that it is still a fair deal to me.
This is a cul-de-sac lot. Are we going to be responsible for maintaining any aesthetics or anything?
Just like we have gravel drives into.
Cutting the lot, maintaining the
Yeah.
grass, because we're right in the middle of a
Same thing we
subdivision.
do with all of our lift stations. I mean, where's Pete? How many driveways into lift stations through neighborhoods do we have?
Off the top of my head, I can't answer that, but we've got.
A dozen?
At least a dozen.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not new, but I will say, in all fairness to the comments, I'm not proposing this because this is a good land transaction for us. This is not buying a lot and flipping it or, oh, this is a great deal. I need access to that sewer line bad. And if I have a backup, and this is the bottleneck of the system, and I can't get to it,
Major problems, major costs.
I have no practical alternative, right? I mean, there's just no way to get to this thing, and whoever laid it initially should have resolved this, right? When we put the line in that runs, you know, almost parallel to 20 from the manhole over toward the hotel, so. Go, Pete.
One thing I wanted to add to that is we're not just trying to maintain right of way, so to speak. It's imperative that we get access to that particular manhole where that 8-inch line goes under the interstate. And in order to clean that properly, you have to use the largest vacuum truck that they've got out there, which is tremendously big and heavy. And therefore, when Tom said we have to build a road, even from the cul-de-sac to get up to the manhole, that's what it requires so the truck doesn't bog down and get stuck. But that's a critical access point for the city from the south to the north of all the wastewater flow that's coming this way. So that's why it's that important.
I appreciate those comments. It weighs on me even more now as I recall the numerous meetings I've been in over getting back there. And hindsight's 20/20, but if you'd have started your presentation how you just finished it, which was, I'm not presenting this to you as a good real estate transaction. I think we could have got past some of the initial jitters that some of us had. All right, council, any other questions?
Just one question.
Yes,
You
sir,
said
go
we got to
ahead.
build a road. What's it going to cost us to put a road in?
You want to take a shot at that? Talking about a lot of loads of gravel, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's not really a road. It's a stout driveway to get a truck up. Probably $5,000, no more than that.
Oh, okay.
But you'll bring that to us separately, Bobby.
Can you
We
use,
can.
We
Yes.
can tell you, yeah.
Yeah.
can you use the asphalt shavings you're
Yes.
stockpiling?
Yes.
Don't
You
say
re-
that
question.
Villarica
You
doesn't
already read our
recycle.
We've been trying to use the millings every time we have an opportunity.
I was going to say, that is actually going on regularly. We are finding ways. We don't always come out here and talk about, all those things that are going on, but we are finding other ways to save money.
No,
I
that's,
think sometimes
and
people
it's
don't think
good.
that's what we're doing, but that we obviously are doing that.
It's a lot better than dumping it somewhere. So when we're recycling, just like they're using tires for rubber things on the playground, I love to hear it when we can use that and not dump it somewhere.
All right, if there are no objections, I'm going to make this consent number 17. All right,
No,
we're going to move on now to public comments. Are there? Thank you, ma'am. So I'm going to ask you to please keep your comments on a professional level. Are there people here who will give comment? Okay, there will be. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be of a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. If you deviate from this protocol, you'll receive a warning. If you do it again, you're going to be asked to leave. Only one person speak at a time and no comments from the audience. Mr. Jeff Matthews, will you be speaking? Thank you, sir. Ms. Jody Mount, come forward. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Jody Mount, 214 Rock Martin Road here in Villarica. And I just want to kind of give a little history lesson. Historically, Villarica has kicked the can down the road, so I really appreciate the fact that a lot of these costs that we're having to deal with and problems are from that. And one of the reasons they've kicked the, well, I don't know why. I don't know why, to get reelected. But historically, we have not held developers accountable for their work. When I say we, I'm talking about elected officials, appointed officials, and city staff have acted like developers are doing us a favor by coming here and doing things. No, we are doing them a favor by allowing them to come here to Villarica. We've got location, 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 and they need to follow the ordinances. We don't need to bend over backwards to give them deals. I'm really, really, really struggling with what's the point of a tree ordinance when anything, the grading, we can take them out. Popeyes, no sidewalk. The new Bain building, I see no evidence of a sidewalk going in there. There's one across the street. Well, let me tell you, when you're coming down the road from downtown, and you have to walk over on this side, and you want to go to SunTrust, you have to walk all the way up to get to a safe crossing to go over to SunTrust or Susie's Wings or anything else that's back there. You know, it's not safe. We say we want to be a walkable community. It makes economic sense. It makes safety sense. If we're having these things, sidewalks, trees, we need to keep them, you guys. You know, so I just really want you to remember how we got to where we are, why we're dealing with some of these problems we're dealing with, like at the Avante building and the sewer situation. And we have these ordinances for a reason. You know, let's enforce them, please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else here? I have no more on my list. All right, seeing no more, I will close public comments, and I will ask Bobby one question. I did the groundbreaking for the Bain building, and I saw the rendering there. I don't recall if I saw sidewalks in front of the Bain building on that rendering.
You saw sidewalk, yes, sir. Sidewalk will be poured in the absolute last phase of that development. You don't pour a sidewalk during construction because you end up keep re-pouring it.
Totally good. I just wanted that to be said.
Yes, it is required, and it has been, yes.
Thank you, Bobby.
It will be there.
All right, so let's start to clean up this agenda, which is a mess. There's probably a few things that I'm going to miss, so y'all just be patient, and then I'll let you correct me at the end. I want to first just call out the consent agenda, but I know there's also some cleanup on a few items. So consent item number 1 will be appointment of William D. Coleman Jr. to the Villarica Development Authority. Consent number 2 would be the appointment of David Rogers to the Historic Preservation Commission. Consent number 3, appointment of Sarah Pitts to the Historic Preservation Commission. Consent number 4, appointment of Alan White to Historic Preservation Commission. Consent number 5, appointment of Renee Hooks to Historic Preservation Commission. Consent number 6, appointment of Mac Pilgrim to Planning and Zoning Commission. Consent number 7, appointment of Tom Flowers to Planning and Zoning Commission. Consent number 8, appointment of John Hannaback to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Consent number 9 is the splash pad equipment purchase. Consent number 10, Avanti/Welcome Center plumbing repair. Consent number 11, to engage KBS Heating and Cooling to replace a 7.5-ton unit located at 70 Horace Luther Drive, Villarica, Georgia. Consent number 12, purchase active shooter hard armor plate vests. Consent number 13, approval of Copier maintenance agreement with the police department. Let's add that to the end of that item, police department. Consent number 14, emergency repair of the North Plant number 1 aerator gearbox and motor. Consent number 15, professional services agreement with Michael Bledsoe and the engineering group. Consent number 16, general election 2021 qualifying fees. Consent number 17 is the approval of the resolution to purchase lot 11 in Tanyard Village. Does anybody see anything different on the consent agenda? Okay. Item number B7 on the council work session agenda, I will ask that some council member make a motion to table that when we get to it in the regular session. And items number 8 and 9, item number B8, I will ask for an amendment to the motion to strike pages 14 and 15. And items B9 and 10, these items need to be tabled to the next council meeting. Does anybody see any changes that I've missed or any cleanup that we need to do? Yes, sir, Mr. Barber.
Tell me what we're doing with 8 again. Because I thought we were pushing all 3 of those.
So we're gonna, my understanding is,
It's an adoption of a supplement.
you need to turn your mic on.
Mike.
It's an adoption of a supplement, not an amendment to the zoning, or so it doesn't require a public hearing.
So we're gonna approve all of it except pages 14 and 15.
I don't buy that.
I don't think that it makes much sense to, I mean, if it's a change, if it's gonna be it's not an official change, but it is a supplement, I think they ought to have the public hearing on that also.
Okay, that's a different opinion than what we got a little earlier, so,
Okay.
but
Well,
that's
I-
okay, so
I-
we will do that.
Yeah,
So,
I just think it makes sense to.
All right.
Maybe you could get by without doing it, but I think you'd raise questions if you didn't have a public hearing on
well,
it.
then we'll do that. Let's
We'll yield
table
to the
that item
professional
as well.
opinion.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest we table that.
We'll table that item as well, okay?
Good.
And then when we do bring it back with the public hearing, we will agree to amend it. Yes, ma'am.
7 through 10.
8, 9, and 10.
7,
Oh,
8,
7, 8,
9,
10, yeah.
7,
10.
8, 9, and 10.
All right. I told y'all it was a mess. It was gonna take us a minute. All right. Does anybody see anything different? All right. Mr. Mecklin, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Mr. Barber? All right. Any members of